The first time it happened, I didn't even know what I was stepping into. I had just come over to drop off a box of old photos my mom had asked me to scan, something she'd been nagging me about for weeks. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that makes every creak of floorboards feel loud, intimate. I hadn't expected her to be there. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, a book open but forgotten in her lap, sunlight streaming through the half-drawn curtains, catching the silver strands in her hair just right. She looked up when I knocked softly, and for a moment the world felt like it had shrunk to that small bedroom. Her eyes, warm, sharp, and unreadable, met mine, and I realized I'd never really noticed the way her smile could make a room feel smaller, closer, more dangerous in the best way. "Come in," she said, her voice softer than I remembered, almost hesitant. She patted the bed beside her, a subtle invitation that made my stomach knot. I hesitated, pretending to glance at the scattered photos on the dresser, but my eyes kept drifting back to her. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with youth. Her presence was magnetic, a quiet gravity pulling me in. I perched on the edge of the bed, careful not to seem intrusive, though my hands shook slightly from nerves I couldn't explain. She looked at me as if she knew exactly what I was thinking, and I hated and loved the way that made me feel, exposed but alive. "It's weird seeing you here," I said, trying to sound casual, my voice higher than usual. She laughed, a soft, low sound that made my chest tighten. "It's only weird if you make it weird," she replied, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. There was a pause, long enough that it should have felt uncomfortable, but instead, it hummed with unspoken tension. I wanted to say something clever, something that would make her laugh or notice me more, but the words got caught. I noticed the curve of her neck, the way the sunlight kissed her skin, the faint scent of vanilla and something else I couldn't name. My pulse was loud in my ears. Then she did something that stole my breath. She leaned a little closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off her. "I've always wondered," she started, trailing off as if she wasn't sure she should continue. Her hand moved toward mine, not reaching, not quite, but close enough that the air between us seemed to thrum. My mind raced. This was wrong. My mom's best friend. And yet, it didn't feel wrong in the way I had expected. It felt like a slow pull, like gravity shifting in my chest. I had never wanted someone like this, not like this, but the thought of leaving felt impossible. She gave me a look then, one that held questions, daring, something dangerous. "Do you want to see?" Before I could answer, before my brain could process whether I should say yes or run, the doorbell rang downstairs. The sound shattered the bubble around us, a sharp reminder that the world outside this room still existed. She froze, a faint gasp escaping her lips, her eyes flicking toward the door. I swallowed hard, caught somewhere between panic and desire, and realized that nothing after this moment could ever be the same. I stayed in the doorway longer than I probably should have, pretending to adjust the photos in my hands, but all I could do was watch her. She was moving slowly, almost unconsciously, stacking books on the nightstand, smoothing the bedspread with a deliberate care that made my chest tighten. There was something about the way she carried herself, graceful, controlled, but with a softness around the edges, that pulled at me in ways I couldn't name. I knew I shouldn't feel this way. I had friends my own age who called me over to parties, joked about crushes that were trivial. But with her, it was different. Dangerous. She was my mother's best friend. She was nearly twice my age. And yet, sitting there, sunlight hitting the slight laugh lines around her eyes, I realized I had spent years thinking about her in a way I hadn't allowed myself to admit. She noticed me lingering and tilted her head. "You're thinking," she said, not accusatory, just stating it like a fact. Maybe," I admitted, because lying felt impossible. My mind raced with images of what could happen, what shouldn't happen. My last relationship had ended messy and immaturely. I was still learning how to navigate closeness, how to hold someone without breaking them or myself. She had been through more: divorces, heartbreaks, loneliness, and still, she was radiant in a way that made you forget the mistakes you'd made. "I've been alone for a while," she said suddenly, almost whispering. I realized she wasn't talking about a romantic partner. The vulnerability in her voice made me want to reach for her hand, just to let her know she wasn't alone anymore. We fell into an easy silence, each of us caught in our own thoughts. I thought about my mother, how she trusted this woman like a sister. I thought about the messiness of desire, of longing for someone you're not supposed to want. I felt guilty before I even touched her. And still, I couldn't step back. She finally sat down on the bed again, closer this time, and my stomach clenched. "Do you remember the summer at the lake?" she asked softly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. My mind scrambled: summer trips, childhood memories, but then I remembered. I had been 12, she had been there with my mom, and I remembered how her laughter had filled the cabin, how it had seemed bigger than life itself. Yeah," I said, voice catching. Her hand hovered near mine for a moment, fingers brushing the edge of mine almost accidentally. My heart thundered, and I didn't pull away. I didn't move. The contact was electric, a dangerous spark that neither of us could name yet. She leaned back slightly, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity one couldn't ignore. "You've grown," she said softly, almost like a warning, almost like a promise. The air between us shifted, heavy with history, desire, and a quiet understanding that nothing would ever be simple again. I wanted to reach for her hand fully, to close the gap, but a part of me held back, the weight of reality pressing on my chest. And still, my body betrayed me, leaning ever so slightly closer, unable to resist. For a brief moment, the world outside ceased to exist. Two people, caught between what was right and what they wanted, suspended in a tension that neither dared to name aloud. I shouldn't have stayed, but something about the way she looked at me made leaving impossible. The afternoon sunlight had faded into a soft, golden haze, and the quiet house suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. I could feel my pulse in my throat as she shifted on the bed, just close enough that the scent of her, warm, vanilla, something faintly floral, hit me in waves. We didn't speak at first. My hands fidgeted with the corner of a pillow, hers rested on her lap, fingers tracing invisible patterns. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat was dry, my mind a mess of desire and guilt. Then the sound of a car pulling into the driveway froze me. My mother's voice echoed faintly from downstairs. "I'll be home soon," she called, cheerful but oblivious. My heart sank. I knew exactly how complicated this was becoming. She caught my gaze and didn't flinch. "Do you need to go?" Her voice was steady, but there was a vulnerability there, a question I couldn't ignore. Maybe I should," I said, though every part of me screamed to stay. Her hand brushed mine, not fully, not deliberately, but enough to ignite a jolt I couldn't ignore. "Stay a little," she whispered. The sound of it sent shivers down my spine. I wanted to lean in, to close the gap, but my brain screamed warnings. Age. Mom. Boundaries. Everything I'd been taught about what was right and wrong. I stepped back, awkward, my fingers brushing hers in a fleeting contact that felt like a lifetime. She sighed softly, her eyes shadowed with something I couldn't name: longing, regret, temptation. "You've grown into someone dangerous," she said quietly, half smiling. I laughed nervously, heart hammering. Dangerous. That's exactly what this felt like. We lingered like that, on opposite sides of a line we both wanted to cross but couldn't. The door creaked as it shifted, reminding us that the world outside was still real. Then, unexpectedly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my roommate. "Are you seriously at her place?" Panic flared. I cursed under my breath, realizing how reckless this was. My eyes darted to her, half expecting anger, disappointment, but she only raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "Looks like someone's keeping tabs," she murmured, amusement laced with tension. The absurdity of it made me laugh, though my chest was tight. I stepped closer, the gap shrinking despite every logical thought screaming at me to stop. Our knees brushed, and suddenly the tension between us was undeniable. Her hand moved, slowly, teasingly, closer to mine again. This time, I didn't step back. We paused, breathing the same air, caught in a moment neither of us could define. The thought of my mother coming home, of getting caught, should have made me pull away. Instead, it made my heart race faster, my mind narrower, focused solely on her. Then she leaned slightly forward, lips almost brushing mine. A spark shot through me, hot and dangerous. But the sound of footsteps on the stairs jolted us apart, her hand pulling back just in time. My chest heaved. I wanted to collapse onto the bed and stay there forever, or run out and never come back. And just like that, the world reminded us that we were teetering on the edge of something we couldn't yet admit, yet couldn't resist. The next evening, I found myself back at her house, unable to stop thinking about her. Every rational thought I had clashed with a hunger I couldn't name. I told myself it was curiosity, admiration even, but my pulse betrayed me the moment I stepped into her living room. She was there, sitting on the couch, a cup of tea in her hands, legs tucked beneath her, and that quiet, almost imperceptible smile tugged at my chest. "I didn't think you'd come back," she said softly. There was a lightness in her tone, but the way her eyes lingered on mine made it impossible to ignore the tension. I couldn't stop thinking about you," I admitted before I could stop myself. The words hung in the air, heavier than I expected. She froze, her hand tightening slightly around the cup, a flicker of surprise, then something else, crossing her face. "You shouldn't," she whispered, and the shake in her voice betrayed the calm she tried to project. I knew she was right. Everything about this was taboo. Me, her friend's son, barely out of college. Her, older, wise, experienced, someone I had admired since I was a kid. And yet, every rule I tried to recite in my mind evaporated the moment I looked at her. I stepped closer, drawn in by something I didn't want to fight. My fingers itched to reach for hers, to feel the warmth of her skin. She noticed and shifted slightly, a subtle retreat that made my chest tighten. "Why do you always do this?" I asked, voice low, struggling to mask the longing. "Make it impossible for me to walk away." Her gaze dropped, tracing the rim of her cup, and for a moment, I thought she might say something, anything, that would push me back. Instead, she whispered, almost to herself, "Because you remind me of what I've been missing." That single sentence hit me harder than I expected. Desire, fear, guilt, all tangled into one tight knot in my stomach. I wanted to argue, to rationalize, to run, but my body refused. I wanted her. I wanted every risky, impossible thing that came with her. A noise from the street made her glance toward the window, and I noticed her hesitation, the tension in her shoulders, the quick exhale, the way her eyes flickered with uncertainty. The vulnerability was intoxicating. I reached out, my fingers brushing the back of her hand. Her breath itched, and I knew the line we'd danced around for days was about to vanish. "Are we insane?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Her eyes met mine, wide, glistening, and I saw everything she was feeling, the longing, the fear, the thrill, the shame, and it mirrored my own. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her lips trembling just slightly. For a moment, the world shrank to just us, the sofa, the soft lamplight, the electric space between our bodies. My heart was pounding, my chest tight. Every rule, every warning, every moral boundary I clung to was gone, and all that remained was her. And then, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, panic flashing in her eyes. I saw it, a message that promised to shatter the fragile bubble we had built, a reminder that the outside world was waiting. My hand hovered above hers, my chest heaving. And just like that, everything was on the brink. One move, one word, one breath, and nothing would ever be the same. I was still sitting on the edge of her sofa, heart hammering, every nerve screaming that one move could tip us over the edge, when I heard it, a voice from the hallway. Not my mother, not the mailman, but her ex-husband. "I forgot my keys," he said casually, leaning against the doorway, oblivious to the storm he'd just walked into. Time froze. I could feel my stomach drop. She stiffened beside me, hand tightening around her mug like a lifeline. The warm, intimate space between us snapped, replaced by a cold awareness that we were dangerously exposed. "I didn't hear you come in," she said, voice even, but her eyes darted toward mine. Guilt, fear, desire, all tangled in her gaze. I swallowed hard, trying to make sense of what just happened. He smiled politely, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, completely unaware of the tension he had just disrupted. "I just need my spare key. Didn't want to wake anyone," he said. She nodded, setting her mug down carefully, and I could see the weight pressing down on her. She glanced at me, a flash of apology there, but also something like defiance, like she was silently daring me to stay, daring me to not run. "Stay here," she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. And in that moment, the world narrowed again. I realized that everything about this, every heartbeat, every hesitation, every longing glance, was now a gamble. A single misstep could ruin us. As he fumbled with the keys, I noticed her trembling slightly, the subtle quiver in her hands betraying her composed exterior. She caught my eye again, and we shared a look that spoke volumes: frustration, fear, desire, and a reckless sort of hope all rolled into one. When he finally left, the door clicked shut, and the silence returned, heavy and charged. She sank back onto the sofa, exhaling shakily. "I didn't expect him so early," she admitted, finally letting her shoulders relax. Her hand brushed mine, accidentally, or maybe not, and my chest tightened. I almost left," I confessed. The words were raw, trembling, because leaving felt like abandoning something that had already become too important. She turned to face me, eyes searching mine. "I don't want this to end," she said softly. The admission was dangerous in itself, simple, yet profound, carrying the weight of all the risk we were flirting with. I reached for her hand fully this time, fingers entwining with hers. The spark from our previous moments flared, hotter now, fueled by the interruption, the exposure, the near betrayal of being caught. "Then we take it one step at a time?" I asked, voice low, careful, though my heart begged for more. Her lips curved slightly, a mix of relief and daring in her smile. "One step for now," she murmured, leaning just a fraction closer. I felt every rule, every line of caution blur. The game had changed, but our connection, tenuous, risky, impossible as it was, had only grown stronger. And as the room filled with that quiet tension again, I realized that nothing about this was safe anymore. But I couldn't imagine walking away. The house was quiet again, but the air between us crackled with a tension neither of us could ignore. I could feel the weight of every choice, every warning, every rule pressing against my chest, and yet, the pull toward her was stronger than anything I'd felt before. She sat on the edge of the sofa, fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. Her gaze met mine, steady, vulnerable, and I felt my own defenses crumble. "We can't pretend this isn't happening anymore," I said, voice low, trembling slightly. Her lips parted, a soft inhale escaping her, as if she'd been holding her breath for years. "I know," she admitted, her eyes glossy but unwavering. "But it's dangerous. You know that." I nodded because I did. Every rational part of my brain screamed to run, to step back, to preserve the life outside this room. But my body, my heart, my soul, it refused. Every moment we'd shared, Every brush of fingers, every unspoken glance had built a bridge I couldn't let go of. Slowly, cautiously, I reached for her hand. Her skin was warm beneath my fingers, and I could feel her pulse, fast and unsteady. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned just slightly closer, and my chest tightened as if it were trying to squeeze the tension out of me. "I've wanted this, for a long time," I confessed, voice almost a whisper. "I know it's wrong in so many ways, but I can't stop thinking about you." She bit her lip, eyes lowering, then back up at me. "I've tried to fight it. I've tried to hold back. But every time you're near, it's like nothing else exists." The honesty in her words made my chest ache. I wanted to close the distance, to bridge the final gap between fear and desire. Our knees brushed, our hands fully entwined, and I realized we had passed the point of no return. Her breath hitched when I reached for her face, thumb brushing the corner of her lips. I could see every layer of her, the strength, the vulnerability, the hesitation, the longing, and it was all laid bare for me. "I don't care about the rules right now," I murmured, leaning closer. "I just care about you." Her eyes softened, a mixture of relief and daring, and I felt her hand press against my chest, grounding us both. "Then we face it, together," she whispered. Time seemed to slow. The world outside, the house, the stairs, the neighborhood, even my mother, faded into insignificance. There was only this room, this fragile, perfect, impossible connection, and the weight of everything we'd held back pressed against us like gravity. And then, as we leaned toward each other, a shiver ran through me, not fear, not guilt, but pure, electric anticipation. Her eyes met mine one last time before the threshold, that final breath before the leap, leaving the outcome suspended, dangerous, and undeniable. Whatever happened next, we had crossed a line. One we couldn't unsee, undo, or forget. And for the first time, I realized it didn't matter. The moment stretched between us like a held breath finally released. I felt her hand in mine, warm and steady, a reassurance that whatever came next, we were choosing it together. The house around us seemed to fade into a blur, the sofa, the soft glow of the lamp, even the shadows on the wall mattered less than the space we now shared. She leaned into me slightly, and I felt the weight of everything we'd held back lift, replaced by an intimacy that was messy, human, and real. There were no grand declarations, no perfect lines, I didn't need them. Her presence said everything. "I don't know what comes next," she admitted softly, her forehead brushing against mine. "But I want to figure it out. With you." I laughed quietly, a little nervously, because I didn't know either. Life outside this room would still have its rules, its judgments, its complications, but right now, none of that mattered. "Then we take it one day at a time," I said. "No rush. No pretending. Just us." She smiled, and it was a smile that carried relief, daring, and a touch of mischief, the same spark that had drawn me in from the very beginning. I felt my heart loosen in ways I hadn't thought possible, the tension and longing we'd held now transformed into something soft, steady, and undeniable. We sat there for a long while, hands entwined, talking in half-words, glances, and small touches that conveyed more than sentences ever could. We laughed at our awkwardness, admitted our fears, and quietly acknowledged the risks we were taking, but neither of us pulled back. Later, as the evening stretched into night, she rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt a profound sense of rightness, even in the middle of everything that had once felt impossible. The line we had crossed wasn't easy, and the world outside might never fully approve, but in that moment, nothing outside mattered. And then, as I finally leaned down and brushed my lips against her hair, I realized we had both arrived at a place neither of us had dared to hope for, a fragile, messy, human kind of love that was entirely our own. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple. But it was real. And for the first time, I understood that real love didn't need to be perfect, It just needed courage, patience, and the willingness to hold on through everything else. The night stretched on, quiet and warm, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were exactly where we were meant to be. Together. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?